Hello and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video. Myself and Marta, as always, I'm here with the latest news from the tech world in the last 24 or so hours. For those of you wondering about Paul, he's still a little bit sick, just recovering, but he will be back shortly with all the information in hand that you guys have been very helpfully emailing him, so thank you for that. We're going to begin today's proceedings with something regarding Rocket Lake S. And yes, I did say Rocket Lake. I know we haven't even really had Comet Lake S yet. We are already hearing rumours and rumblings about what its successor is up to, which of course is Rocket Lake S. It is currently rumoured to be launching next year, but there are some reports saying later this year. But regardless of that, we have several entries for some motherboards which have been spotted by Momomo over on Twitter, and it was covered by computerbase.de, so you can find both of those linked in the description below this video. So we see a few non-Rocket Lake entries. We see 3 Comet Lake motherboards being shown here, a mini ITX, micro ITX, and thin mini ITX. But we also see the entry GA-IMB510 micro ATX motherboard with Rocket Lake S processor. And of course we also see Elkhart Lake N series SoC and AMD V2000 processor. So not much information to be gleaned here, unfortunately, other than the fact that we do see the listing being posted by Global American for a H510 base motherboard, but unfortunately it has now been removed. But that's not the only Intel thing I have for you today. We're going to move over to Comet Lake itself and the proposed PCIe 4 support. So, you may have seen the report from Tom's Hardware, where basically they said that according to their sources, and you can find their article linked in the description below this video, a few LGA 1200 socket motherboards did feature some of the necessary elements of PCIe 4 support, but unfortunately, Intel made some errors with the chipset itself, and that apparently was where we can lay the blame for the lack of eventual support. But we have had a rebuttal to this report from semi-accurate Charlie Demerjian. Hopefully I have pronounced that surname correctly. So they have said, quote, Comet Lake never was slated to have and never will have PCIe 4 for all the reasons I've been saying for the last few years. Now, according to what we have heard, PCIe 4 just wasn't planned for Comet Lake processors, and we just basically never heard that it was having PCIe 4. Now, I'm not saying that Tom is wrong, but would be surprised if they had planned to include it in this particular line of processors. But you can have a look at Tom's original article in the description below this video, and of course the tweet from Charlie Demerjian as well, and you can make your own judgment. But regardless of which way you fall, apparently we will not be seeing the 400 series motherboards feature PCIe 4. The question is whether they were actually ever were intended to. Let me know your thoughts on this one, guys. I'd be curious to get your perspective on this. However, we're going to move over now to a less than rosy report again for Intel and Micron. So basically what we have is the liquidation trust for Stanford of Shanovsky's, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, long bankrupt company, the EDC, or Energy Conversion Devices, is currently engaged in a legal battle against both Intel and Micron. So basically, the long and short of this is that the trust believes that they are owed royalties for his 3D X-Point innovation and the rights of first refusal to the stock of Ovanix, which was a company of Ovchinsky and the former Micron CTO Tyler Lowry. Now, if the name 3D X-Point is ringing a bell somewhere in your mind, but you can't quite place it, basically it is the tech behind Optane memory. So the agreement apparently that was made with Tyler Lowry was that Ovchinsky's company would, quote, license its valuable intellectual property to a B-formed entity which became Ovanix, and under this agreement they were entitled to 0.5% of the revenue it generated, which in between the fairly long period of 1999 to 2012 was $58 million. But when EDC eventually did unfortunately go bankrupt, Micron did actually acquire the rights to 3D X-Point. They sold, that being EDC, its stock to Micron as part of the bankruptcy process, and Intel acquired preferred rights to this stock in 2000. So essentially what the lawsuit is saying is that the EDC never actually forfeited its right to that percentage of the profits, nor, quote, rights of first refusal relating to Lowry's stock in Ovanix and assets of Ovanix. So essentially what they're trying to do with this lawsuit is get their hands on their share of the profits from Intel and Micron, since both companies did actually release products based on 3D XPoint between 2017 and 2019. Now I will say here that most of the counts in the lawsuit are focused on Micron themselves, but Intel is named a few times. Mostly they're accusing the company of aiding and abetting in a purposeful attempt to keep any money legally owed to EDC. For those of you wanting a more in-depth look-see at what is actually going on here, well, you can see a very extensive write-up by cbronline.com. You can find that linked in the description below this video. So go check that out if you want to go see what all this is all about then. Let's move on, however, to some console news, beginning with the Nintendo Switch. So this is not the first time that we've been talking about Nintendo Switch having the potentiality of a new model, a Pro version if you would. Of course, we already have the Lite version, which is just the handheld element of the console, but we have heard a few rumblings here and there regarding a upgraded version of the console. So we have a very interesting rumour circulating online, which was posted on clien.net. But according to that report, a new Nintendo Switch model could actually be coming out in the final quarter of this year. Interestingly, the SoC that this report is saying that this console will use is not the new Tegra X1, but new custom processors that Nintendo is developing with Nvidia. It's going to be based on, and wait for it, Volta. Bit of a strange choice, I'm sure you're thinking, because that's what I was thinking when I first read it. Obviously, Volta is available as an SoC, and it is custom. So, could it be possible? I mean, sure, why not? It would be a bit odd rather than a new Tegra X1 Plus, which would probably make a bit more logical sense, given that obviously we saw the Tegra in the original Switch. But Volta potentially could bring some pretty nice power to the table, especially if the rumours regarding 4K support and the massive performance improvements are to be believed. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but I'm definitely intrigued to see what, if anything, Nvidia are cooking up with Volta for Nintendo. So let's move over now to a couple of things regarding the Xbox Series X. And the first thing we want to talk about is the ports of the machine. Now you may recall, not too long ago, I discussed the images of the ports that we got thanks to Thurrott.com. And now we have a close look at the actual real console itself. It's posted on both NeoGAF and the Resetera forums. So we have a good look at the front as well as the back of the console. Now the front is pretty much what we've already seen in the reveal from Microsoft. We can of course see a CD drive and eject button right next to it. And then we see a USB port down the bottom right hand corner. I'm not quite sure what that thing is above the USB port. Perhaps it's simply just a power light, or it could be something else entirely, perhaps a reset button. It's hard to say, but what we're mostly going to focus on here is obviously going to be the back. So, unsurprisingly, we see lots and lots of air holes here. I have said many times that both consoles are going to be really pushing airflow. So, what do we see here? Well, we see a couple of USB ports, hardly surprising there, a Ethernet port, power cable, and HDMI. You might wonder what that large rectangular port in the middle is. Apparently that's for debugging, and of course we can also see the all-important optical digital audio output. Now nothing really hugely surprising here, to be honest. Once again, USB 3 would have been nice to see, but still this lines up pretty much with what we can expect from the console based on reports and based on, well, common sense. Also though, we have some reports regarding the SSD of the machine. So according to a report from digitimes.com, the SSD inside the console will be powered by a Phison controller and is going to be a Gen 4x4 NVMe SSD. To get into the specifics, however, for the Phison product number, the PS5019-E19T just rolls right off the tongue, as I'm sure you'll agree. We have a datasheet as well, which has helpfully been posted by wccftech.com. You can, of course, find their article as well, linked below. So what we can see is that the NVMe SSD inside the Series X is going to be quite nippy indeed, with reading speeds up to 3.6 gigabytes a second and write speeds of 2.2 gigabytes a second max, and we also have 2 terabytes of the max that we can expect here. So we're going to finish up now with some game news regarding the consoles themselves, the first of which is related to the Xbox Series X, as we're going to be seeing a new Rocksteady title. So this is all according to the leaker Osiris Black from NeoGAF, and they are basically saying they'll get at least two, new Xbox Series X games announced at this year's E3, and we're going to be seeing a new Rocksteady title along with Killer Instinct 2. Killer Instinct 2 would actually be really, really nice, and I hope they keep the same sort of model that they did with the original. The ability to play for free and unlock the characters you want, or just buy the whole game outright, was actually a really nice option. Now, Rocksteady obviously are best known for their work on Batman Arkham. Could we be seeing a new Batman game? Probably not. I think that series is done, unless they want to go back to a more Arkham Asylum style game. That would be great. As good as the more open world ones were, I loved Arkham Asylum, and I would love for them to go back to that sort of game. Or it could be a new DC superhero, or it could be something completely and utterly different. But I'm sure it'll be interesting because, well, Rocksteady, they know what they're doing. But we're going to move over now to a game for the PS5. So according to the renowned industry insider Emery Kaya over on Twitter, we are going to be seeing a new horror IP from Sony. They actually said, quote, "I know I don't normally post about gaming stuff except Batman related things, but I have learned that Sony is currently working on a new horror IP. Interesting, hashtag PS5, hashtag PlayStation." Now obviously the information ends there, so it could literally be anything. Hopefully it's going to be something good. More horror games makes me happy in my soul. I love horror games, they're one of my favourite genres. Now obviously the chatter around the internet is that they're hoping this could be Hideo Kojima, and of course he has said in the past that he does want to make the quote scariest horror game, and famously his work on Silent Hills was cancelled. I wouldn't be surprised if they've turned to him to make a horror game, but they might have gone to a more traditional horror studio. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe we'll see it at the February reveal, maybe we'll see it later on the year at Gamescom, because obviously Sony are not going to be at E3, but I'm intrigued. Let's just leave it at that. Anywho, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, your support is highly appreciated. Do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It does help out a great deal, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.